Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Check out fullpresscoverage.com for this and other great podcasts and articles. You can find our podcast anywhere podcasts are found. Download us on iTunes, leave a review. Make sure it's a 5-star review. I don't want anything less than 5 stars. And find us on YouTube at youtube.com/JetStryer. That is my personal YouTube page. Since SAP does not have one, we're using my YouTube page to show our beautiful faces to everybody. So, SAP, I hope you, along with everybody listening, had a good weekend. And so, any highlights before we get into the basketball?
Of the weekend? Yeah, I turned 58 on Saturday, so I feel older.
You did indeed. Happy birthday.
Thank you. I'm now 58. I'm the world's oldest millennial. I am LeBron James' oldest fan. And I push back against older people than me on some of their basketball takes. And I even push back against young guys like you who act older than I do with your takes as well. But no, it was a great weekend. Enjoyed my 58th birthday, and hopefully we'll live another half of that. So if I get to 87,
I'm hoping 58 more years. Why not?
Well, that would get me to 116. That would be a miracle, a real miracle.
Medical science is pretty good now, Sap.
Yeah, the diet I'm on, I don't think that's going to last as far as getting to 116. Too much sodium, too many carbohydrates, not enough exercise. But maybe that's my own little secret to staying alive is just eating garbage and not getting enough exercise. Not married, no kids. So I think that lowers the stress level. So that's a good thing.
So there's like a woman, I want to say it's in Ireland, maybe it's in China, someone who who says drinking whiskey every day is what's kept her alive past 105 years old. So I don't think that there's an exact science to it, Sap.
No, you see these people that are 90 years old that drink black coffee and smoke cigarettes. What are you going to tell them at 90 to give up coffee and cigarettes? It's worked for them for 90 years. You remember all of the funny commercials. Maybe you're too young to remember this, but Georgia, which was part of the old Soviet Union, there was a certain part of it where people drank a lot of vodka and they lived into their hundreds. So there's all different ways to get there.
I think that you're being kind when you're saying a certain part of Georgia being part of the Soviet Union. I'm assuming everywhere in Georgia they drank vodka. It was part of the Soviet Union after all, Sap.
That is their national beverage.
I think it was just a small pocket.
No. It was the whole old former state, and they've been kind of engulfed by Russia.
It's like in Massachusetts, there's a small place on the Cape where they just drink beer. It's like, well, everywhere here in Massachusetts they drink beer.
That's true. Very, very true.
Do you share your birthday with, I know, Al Pacino, right? Any famous athletes that you share your birthday with?
Yes, Tim Duncan.
Ooh, that's a good one.
That's a good one. The 8th greatest basketball player in NBA history. Also someone who, growing up, I loved as a college quarterback by the name of Art Schlichter, who's much more famous now for being someone who spent many, many years in jail because he was quite the crook. He embezzled money, larceny, had a massive gambling problem. He was a high draft choice of the then Baltimore Colts in 1982. And within a couple of years, he was out of the league. He had a massive gambling problem.
That's not somebody that you want to be happy sharing your birthday with.
No, but while I was in high school, that was my favorite college football player, Art Schlichter. So I've done a better job of picking quarterbacks since, which would be Joe Montana to Aaron Rodgers with Tom Brady somewhere in the middle there, in between those guys. And certainly my basketball choices have been good, from Magic Johnson to LeBron James, with I don't know who between the end of Magic's career and the beginning of LeBron's career. I never had a player that was quite as great as those two, at least in my eyes. And I'm not going to just fall into the trap to say Michael Jordan was my favorite player in between that. That's too easy.
Yeah, well, I mean, considering the other guys you've picked, it's not like that would be unusual for you. You're kind of a front runner.
So I became one, absolutely. Yeah. Especially as I get older. It's LeBron, Aaron Rodgers. I still think Mario Lemieux is the greatest hockey player ever. I think Barry Bonds is the greatest baseball player ever. And I think Roger Federer is the greatest tennis player ever. So, I set a very, very high bar, and I like to debate all of that stuff.
I'm just looking it up, Sap. Football players who share a birthday with Antonio Cromartie, who has about 25 children.
Yes, I
So
may be one of his as well. Yeah.
you have the same birthday as their father.
Well, absolutely. So, I mean, imagine Saturday, we both had birthdays. I think his party was probably a lot bigger than mine and a lot more confusing at
Yeah,
that
very
point. Because it's
confusing.
like, are you my son? Are you my nephew? Are you my cousin? Whatever the case may be. And he celebrated his birthday as well. So that's pretty good because Cromartie was a shutdown corner for about a half a dozen years.
Yeah, he was a lot better defensively in football than he was defensively in lovemaking.
Oh, good one,
That
Jet.
makes
Good
sense.
one,
Thank
Jet.
you.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Strong pun.
He
No
was not in
defense.
favor. He was he was not in favor of prevent defense. That's for sure.
No, did not believe in it. I don't think it was religious either. I think it was just
No.
a personal creed. So happy birthday to
Thank
you,
you.
Sap. I have one coming up in May. So we
Yes.
actually are both pretty close. Do you know what your sign is?
I'm Taurus the Bull. I think you are as well,
I
right?
am too. All right. Two Tauruses. Maybe we should change the name of the podcast to Two Bulls.
Or just bullshit
And
podcast. How's that sound?
Just focus on the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah, exactly, without question. Yours is May
18th.
18th, right? Because my grandniece, who's going to turn 5, is May 16th. So I remember your birthdays being that close. So that's pretty cool. She's also a Taurus the Bull.
Yeah, it's strong. It's a strong astrological sign, less of a strong basketball franchise in the past, 20 some odd years.
Yeah, the only time the Bulls were really significant was with Michael Jordan. Before Michael Jordan, after Michael Jordan, even worse.
Yeah, so, I'll just keep being proud of the astrological sign and not so much the basketball team. But I hope you had a good birthday, Sap, and I hope you were treated to some good basketball over the weekend. Your birthday, actually, there was a lot of Sunday games, a lot of action around the association. Unfortunately for me, the Celtics reverted back into the bad version of the team as they lost to the Hornets. This was their third worst loss of the season, actually, Sap. 125-104. It was never close, just bludgeoned by the Hornets, which is just unacceptable considering no LaMelo Ball, no Gordon Hayward. The Celtics, no excuse to lose to a team like this.
No, it was frustrating because it came on the heels of a disappointing loss on Friday in Brooklyn. So Thursday night at the Garden, you win a real ugly game over Phoenix, one of the best teams in basketball. You go to Brooklyn, you do a really good job against Kyrie Irving, but you still can't beat the Brooklyn Nets. And then you play Charlotte on a Sunday afternoon, and you don't even show up for that game. And I am so sick and tired of hearing from Mike Gorman or Brian Scalabrine or Abby Chin or whoever else that says, well, it's these, weekend afternoon games, matinee games. They just can't get into them. Well, you know what? They stayed in the same time zone. Last time I checked, Charlotte's in the Eastern time zone. Charlotte was also on the court at 1:20 on Sunday afternoon, so they had to deal with that as well. Be professionals. Just go out there and play. When you get to the playoffs, you may be playing in the 1 o'clock window on a Saturday or Sunday, especially in the first round. Can you use that excuse? Come on. It's stupid. It's stupid. It's frustrating because, again, NBC Sports Boston may be the biggest mouthpiece in this city, running neck and neck with WEEI when it comes to the Red Sox. Give the sports some credit. They'll attack the three teams that they carry their games on, the Bruins, the Celtics, and the Patriots. They're not afraid to attack them at all. And yet here we have the group over at NBC Sports Boston, with the exception of Kendrick Perkins, who's not afraid to criticize the Celtics, coming up with all of these absolute ridiculous excuses. How about this one, Jet? The two games they lost, I just ran some numbers because, I like to run numbers. So let's take a look at the contributions or lack thereof of their kind of secondary players, their role players, right? Now, we're going to leave out Kemba Walker, Marcus Smart, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Tristan Thompson, the rest of the guys in those two games. 208 minutes played. Now, in a given game, there's 240 minutes. So 208 minutes, that's nearly a full game of all these backups and has-beens or never-weres contributing 208 minutes. They went 12 of 47 from the floor. That's 26%. 8 of 26 on threes, 31%. They actually shot better from 3 than 2. 40 points in a combined 208 minutes, 38 rebounds, and 17 assists. They're getting nothing from these players, and yet they have to play them because, Kemba can't go back-to-back, and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown need some days off, and it's just frustrating. And again, we do like to bash Brad Stevens here. but this is Danny Ainge's fault. Roster construction is the job of the general manager. He has failed miserably this year, and you can see it every time we got to watch Grant Williams, Romeo Langford, whoever else out there just sucking. And that's the case right now with the Celtics.
Yeah, their bench is horrible, and there's no way around it. I mean, it's terrible. There's just a severe lack of talent on the bench. It's not even like you can say, oh, I feel pretty good about the upside of this guy. I feel decent about the upside of Peyton Pritchard, and I feel decent about the upside of Aaron Nesmith, maybe. But, man, it's just really just devoid of talent, Sap. And yeah, of course that's on Danny Ainge. His job is to put together a team. I got into an argument with Mark D'Amico over the weekend. He works for the Celtics. He's their in-house analyst, according to him. That's what his Twitter bio says. Basically, he's their PR person.
He's like the press secretary for the president. He's not going to say anything bad about the president.
Yeah, and so he was saying,
Jen Psaki at the White House.
Right. So people were criticizing Grant Williams, which he's my favorite person to criticize in the Celtics because the amount of minutes he plays is like a slap in the face to anybody who understands what putting together a good product on the basketball court would be. And so D'Amico was saying, again, this is a guy who works for the Celtics, saying, Danny Ainge has hit on these draft picks. People have a short memory, and he cited Grant Williams as a successful draft pick. And I wrote back, I was like, people were saying, are you crazy? And I was saying to people, you can't take what this guy's saying seriously. He gets paid by the Celtics. They're writing his checks. He can't be objective. And he took issue with that, saying, I wouldn't say it if I wasn't being objective. I said, listen, I respect, that I wouldn't do it if I worked for the Celtics either. I'm not going to jeopardize my paycheck and a good job working for the team by bashing players I have to see every day. But let's be honest, that's the situation. You're paid by the team. You're not going to rip on a guy who he's just not a good player. Specifically, Sap, and talking about Grant Williams, I was looking at the advanced numbers. You like numbers. I like numbers too. And in all those advanced numbers, value over player replacement, VORP, is essentially the basketball equivalent of WAR. Mm-hmm. Or some people like to use their player efficiency rating. VORP is a little bit more entailed. He's a negative value over player replacement. So that means he's worse than the average player at that position who's playing his type of minutes. He's a negative plus minus offensively. He's a negative plus minus defensively. So there's not a single number across his advanced metrics that indicates that he's anything but a below average NBA player. So in what world should a below average NBA player be consistently playing 20 minutes a night on your basketball team? And that's what's happening.
Then you're not a contender. If Grant Williams is your seventh or eighth guy, which he's evolved into because of the injury situation, he can hit a corner three. That's about the only thing he can contribute, and that's not enough to justify 20 minutes per game. I sometimes get the feeling with Grant Williams that the quote-unquote, I'm using air quotes, insiders within the Celtics organization kind of push him the way they used to push Al Horford. Now, Al Horford was a five-time All-Star. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer, but he's had a nice career. But remember when he first got here and he was putting up 14-7, 13-6, and people were saying, why are you paying this guy so much money? I remember Charles Barkley saying, look, I'm 55 years old and 50 pounds overweight. I could probably go out in the court and score 14 and grab 7 rebounds. And I don't think Barkley's that far off on that. People would say, well, you really have to understand the game of basketball to get what the value of Al Horford was. Well, I think you get the same thing here with Grant Williams. And the eye test is he doesn't do much, if anything. So now you're giving him 20 minutes. Langford's been a disappointment. He plays decent defense. Nesmith is supposed to be a good shooter, but he doesn't play defense and he maybe can shoot. So you've got all these players with maybe a half a skill, and you're giving them all these minutes. Again, those players that we're detailing contributed 208 minutes over 2 games against Charlotte, a team that you should beat and might face in a play-in tournament. That's a real possibility. If the Celtics play Charlotte in the play-in tournament, are you going to be totally shocked if the Celtics lose that game? I wouldn't, especially if Lonzo Ball's back or Gordon Hayward's back or whatever the case may be. It's just disappointing. And then the superstars don't play like superstars. I mean, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown wanted to be anywhere but on the basketball court yesterday against Charlotte. You could just see it in their body language right from the get-go. Brad Stevens put them on the bench. They look totally lost out there. That's not what superstars are supposed to bring on a nightly basis, especially when you see that a player's out or, you don't have Robert Williams III and your bench sucks. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown have to be that much better. That's why I don't put them up into superstar categories yet, because superstars bring it every night. If they're not doing it on one end, they're doing it on another end. If Jason Tatum's not hitting a shot, he gets totally disengaged on the defensive end. That's not a great player.
Yeah, and that's why there's so few of those, elite level players, because it is hard to be able to take an off night and still be able to help your team. And the Celtics, after coming off of that 6-game win streak, and then they got the nice win at Phoenix, they've lost 3 of their past 4. And of those 3 losses, they lost to a Chicago Bulls team without Zach LaVine. They lost to a Brooklyn Nets team without Kevin Durant and James Harden, and Kyrie was held in check in that game. And you lost to a Charlotte Hornets team without Gordon Hayward and LaMelo Ball. Those are 3 bad losses. I don't care, where they are in the standings right now. Those teams are all depleted from injuries, and you had Kemba Walker, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum yesterday against Charlotte, and you weren't able to beat it. I don't care that you didn't have Robert Williams. That shouldn't have made a difference. You should beat that Hornets team. You especially should be a lot closer than getting blown out by 20 points to that Hornets team. The start time is irrelevant. So it's bad. And Sap, a lot of it is because the bench is so ineffective. They have no depth, and they can't rely on Tatum and Brown to consistently carry them, because they're either not capable, or they're not at that point in their careers yet where they're able to do that. And we know what the deal is with Kemba Walker. Some nights he's going to look like an all-star. Some nights he's going to look like he's completely shot. That's going to continue to be the trend with Kemba going forward. So you can't count on him either. It's frustrating to see them revert back to, you thought, okay, maybe they figured it out with this win streak. They got some nice wins on the road, but then they've reverted back and losing in 3 of these past 4 to playing that same bad basketball they were before. And I don't know if this is on Brad Stevens. I kind of think it is one way or the other. They never run off of missed baskets, and it's incredibly frustrating, because this team should kill teams in transition. I think it was the Nets game in transition. They got outscored fast break points 52-0. That, I don't even know how that's possible. You score. I don't know if it's worse to give up 52 points in transition or to score 0 points in transition. That it's like mind boggling. So either Brad Stevens isn't telling them run after misses, which every team should do, especially an athletic young team like the Celtics, or they're just not listening to him do that. Either way, it's not good. It doesn't speak well of Brad Stevens, because they're tuning him out, or he's not saying the right thing.
And it doesn't have to result in a layup. You can run into your offense, set a quick screen, an aggressive screen, and next thing you know, you've got an uncontested 3. Teams do that now in the NBA. This isn't 1987, where the Lakers would take the ball off the backboard, give it to Magic Johnson, and it was a 3-on-2 with James Worthy and Byron Scott, and it was a track meet at that point. It doesn't always have to be that way in the NBA, because you can destroy a team with uncontested 3s. Jet, just look at the middle of the Eastern Conference right now. We know that Brooklyn, Philadelphia, and Milwaukee are the top 3 teams in the East. Right now, the Knicks and Atlanta tied for 4th. The Celtics and Miami tied for 6th, the 2 games behind. And then you've got Charlotte, which is a game and a half behind the Celtics, and Indiana, which is another game back, and then another game back to Washington. So it's pretty crowded there in the middle of the Eastern Conference. There's a good chance the Celtics have to play in the play-in tournament, because right now I have more confidence in the Knicks and Atlanta playing better. I have more confidence in Miami continuing to play somewhat better, because they have, I think, better culture there in Miami. And if they can get healthy, I think they're a slightly better team than the Celtics. And look at Washington. They've won 9 out of 10. So, I mean, the Celtics, even if they're the 7 seed going into that play-in tournament, would you feel confident with the Celtics playing Washington in a
No.
7-8 matchup? I wouldn't, because I'll tell you what, the one thing I'll count on in that game is Russell Westbrook's going to bring it. He may shoot 5 for 24, but he'll go get 15 rebounds, get 10 assists, and bust his ass out there. He's not going to lollygag out there like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown did yesterday. I'll guarantee you that.
No, the only team I'd feel good, optimistic about them beating is, well, it depends what the situation is with injuries with Charlotte, but Indiana, I feel like the Celtics would be able to take Indiana. I don't know how you could feel really good about any of these series. And right now, Sap, as you said, as it stands, You have two teams in front of you, the Hawks and the Knicks. The Hawks own the tiebreaker against you, so you'd have to you can't tie with them. You have to have a better record than them outright in order to get a higher seed than them. And the Knicks, you play the last game of the season, and so you might have to, that might be a game that determines if you're the 4 or the 5 seed or if you're in the play-in. So this is a bad time of the year right now with it being so close for the Celtics to suddenly revert back to playing bad basketball stuff. It's so jumbled. The only way they have of getting out of the first round is that 4-5 spot. Otherwise, I think that there's not just a chance that they're going to lose in the first round, because if they play one of those top 3 teams, no doubt they'll lose in the first round, but a strong chance to get swept in the first round, which is just a complete embarrassment based off of what the expectations were and where they've been the past few years, is to be facing a sweep. Right now, as it stands, if you play Milwaukee in the first round, I do think Milwaukee would sweep you or win in 5 games.
Yeah, I mean, 2 years ago, they beat you in 5 games, and Milwaukee had a great regular season. 2 years ago, they had the best record in basketball. You went into that series. It was a second-round matchup, so it wasn't a first-round matchup. Look, if they get swept in the first round and lose, by an average of 15 points per game, they're going to have to make changes, and it's going to have to be with Brad Stevens, because Danny Ainge apparently is not going anywhere. He's a Supreme Court justice. He's been appointed for life. They'll have to move on from Brad Stevens, eat that contract, and Stevens probably gets another job in the NBA or takes a year off, reinvents himself, looks at what takes place in college basketball next year. But could you imagine going down to the last regular season game and you're playing the Knicks to maybe be the 5 seed or even the 6 seed? That's kind of disappointing for a team that made it to the conference finals a year ago. You did lose Gordon Hayward, but you would expect Tatum and Brown to continue to grow. You added Tristan Thompson, who actually has been one of their more consistent players the last couple of weeks. It's incredibly disappointing because this team, teases you. They go out in a winning streak and look really good, and then they come back and lose to the Bulls in Charlotte. I mean, you could justify them losing to Brooklyn because Brooklyn is that good. Even though they didn't have Harden or Durant and Kyrie Irving was shut down. They do have some other weapons, but this is incredibly frustrating. In keeping with our previous podcast with the Oscar theme, for the Celtics, this was the lost weekend, which was 1945's Best Picture, directed by Billy Wilder, starring Ray Milland. Wilder and Ray Milland also won Oscars. The lost weekend for the Celtics, because Friday against Brooklyn, disappointing. Sunday against Charlotte, maddening that you can't beat a team that has 2 of their top 3 players out. And it was also kind of a lost weekend for my team, the Los Angeles Lakers. Got swept by Dallas Thursday and Saturday. But at least with the Lakers, they won a championship a year ago. Now you got Anthony Davis coming back, and LeBron should be back in a week. So they should be in good shape heading to the postseason. I do worry about them falling into that play-in, which I don't want to see them there. And I also worry about them falling into number 6, which could be a first-round series against the Clippers, which is the team I fear the most in the Western Conference. But not a good weekend for either of our teams, Jet.
No, so you're saying, for the Celtics, you're going with a movie reference, The Lost Weekend. I'll go with a theater reference for the Lakers, Much Ado About Nothing. They'll be fine. I've said this to you for months now. I have no doubt that the Lakers will peak in the playoffs and be absolutely fine. I think everything you're seeing here is Much Ado About Nothing. The injuries, the way they're playing right now. Once LeBron and AD are on the court and it's a meaningful game, the way they play, the way they execute will be different. They're just a completely different team. So listen, this is what the team looks like when LeBron's out, and we saw what the team looks like when both those guys are out. When LeBron's in, it's a championship level team, and when LeBron's not, it's a mediocre to bad team. So I don't think that it's a big deal. I really don't. When you've won a title already and you've gotten over that hump, regardless of whether there is in a bubble or not, LeBron's won plenty. He knows how to win. He knows how to turn it off and how to turn it on when it matters. And he should be 100% for the playoffs. AD should be 100% for the playoffs. And that should scare the crap out of every team in the Western Conference. I don't care how the rest of the players are playing. If those 2 guys are on their A game, they're going to be an extremely difficult out. So I don't think it's a big deal. The Celtics thing worries me a lot more than the Lakers thing.
At least the Lakers play defense, right, on a pretty consistent basis. They're still the number 1 ranked defensive team in the league. And that's even without LeBron James and Anthony Davis, 2 elite defenders. To support your point, Jet, LeBron's played 41 games this year. The Lakers are 28-13. That's 68% winning percentage when he plays. They're 7-12, 36% winning percentage when he doesn't play. That's why he's always in the discussion for MVP. He even got MVP votes 2 years ago when the Lakers didn't even make the playoffs because, by definition, MVP, he's always in contention because when he's on the floor, they're a title contender. When he's not, they're not very good.
Yeah, he's
even
the best
with
player
Anthony
in the league.
Davis. Yeah, for a reason, and he elevates those around him. So, yeah, I'm not as worried as I sound about the Lakers, but if they end up number 6 and have to play the Clippers in the first round, that's going to be a brawl. And then maybe Phoenix in the second round. I think they could take care of Phoenix because Phoenix has had a great regular season, but I still don't trust them in the postseason. They're probably one player short from really making a concerted effort to a championship. And then you're playing maybe Denver or Utah in the conference finals. I feel good about that. I just want to stay away from the Clippers as long as I can because that team does scare me. And part of the reason is because of Rajon Rondo, who we know what he brings in the postseason. That's not a myth. That's true. What Rondo brings to the postseason, and he's elevated that team since he was acquired at the trade deadline. So I do think the two best teams in the Western Conference in the end will be the Lakers and the Clippers. I just hope they don't meet in the first round. That would be a bit premature.
Anything else that stuck out to you this weekend in terms of results, Sep?
Not really. Other than Steph Curry put on another show. He had one game where he was off, and then he came back with 2 more ridiculous games where he's, tied James Harden or broke the record for most threes made in a calendar month. I mean, he's playing at an incredibly high level. I still think he's just on the outside looking in of the MVP race. I still can't fathom how people are throwing everybody's name out there except Nikola Jokic for some reason. It's like, well, it's Joel Embiid, and my God, Julius Randle deserves some, love for the MVP, or Steph Curry. It's like, it's Jokic. It's not. Yeah,
he's still going to win it. Jokic is still going to win.
It should be pretty much, I wouldn't say unanimous. That's not going to happen because Steph's the only guy that's ever done it.
He's like under the radar with fans, right? With the Twitter.
Yeah, because he also, what? Does he even have a Twitter page? Does he have a Twitter account? I don't even think he does. I mean, he's like something out of like another era, like this big skilled guy who looks to be out of shape, right? I mean, like there's no, Dwight Howard looks like a superhero. Nikola Jokic looks like, an oversized accountant. A plumber, yeah, just like a kind of sloppy-looking tall plumber, which, would be tough for him to get underneath the sink. But he doesn't have the athletic skills that you look for, although he does. I mean, he's very smooth on his feet. I mean, if you're 7 feet tall and you do everything he does, you have athleticism. He's a great passer, phenomenal rebounder, can shoot threes.
They've continued to win since Murray's gone down.
Absolutely. And they won before, his injury while he was out with something else. So, no, it's Jokic. And I'm like, every day I hear, well, Embiid's in contention. Yeah, he is, but he's not going to win it. Julius Randle? I mean, you're going to elevate Julius Randle to an MVP candidate because the Knicks are overperforming. I mean, let's throw Russell Westbrook in there as well because the Wizards are the second hottest team in the Eastern Conference. It's Jokic. It's that simple.
Yeah, I agree with you. Do you read anything into the Bucks plastering the Sixers twice? I know in one of those games, no Ben Simmons, and the other one, no Simmons or Embiid. Right. I think the Sixers are making a mistake right now being cautious with Embiid and Simmons in that I think they really need that 1 seed. I just think that Brooklyn as a 1 seed is just giving them any extra advantage is just so dangerous. And Philadelphia, we know how good they are at home, and they're kind of mediocre on the road. And there should be even more fans in attendance come postseason time. I think Philly taking their foot off the gas here has been a massive, massive mistake.
I agree with you 100% because I think seeding does matter. Maybe it doesn't matter for the Lakers who can get to the finals as a 6 seed. But if you give Brooklyn the 1 seed, and right now that's what they are, they'll have 2 warm-up series to get to the conference finals. Meanwhile, Philadelphia and Milwaukee, in theory, will meet in the second round, and that's going to be a 6 or 7 game series. A lot will be taken out of them getting into the conference finals. Heck, Brooklyn could probably get to the Eastern Conference finals by giving their 3 stars some games off, not even have the 3 of them play more than a couple of games because they've only played 7 games together this year. But, give Durant some time off, give Kyrie some time off. He'll probably have something